Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Quiet Fire podcast. Today, I want to talk about something a little bit more difficult and something that I feel like touches all of us at some point in our lives, and that is the harsh truth that is dealing with people who repeatedly disappoint us and learning when to stop giving second chances. We'll explore why we keep giving chances to those who let us down, how to recognize unhealthy patterns, and most importantly, how to know when it's time to walk away. 1. The cycle of disappointment. Why do we keep giving chances to people who disappoint us? There is a lot of psychology and science behind the idea of hope and optimism in relationships. A lot of the time, we meet people and we always want to think the best of them. A lot of the time, especially based on our previous experiences, we either have had a lot of good ones and therefore assume it will be the same, or a lot of bad ones and we have hope that this new one will be different. I think there's also something to be said about the difference between an occasional letdown and seeing consistent patterns. Everyone makes mistakes. Everybody has the occasional letdown. That's just a fact of humanness and imperfection, because as humans, we are all imperfect. And so I think there's something to be said about giving grace to people who are making these mistakes, because at the end of the day, nobody is perfect. But at the same time, if you start to notice consistent patterns with people, you have to stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, because that's when things become okay. Because if they believe that how they're treating you is okay, then they will continue to do so, even if it's not. 2. Setting healthy expectations. This is probably the part in relationships that becomes very confusing and can be very difficult. It's always easy to say that you're going to create clear boundaries in your relationships. Sometimes it feels very formal, like a contract, and sometimes it's more casual. But when it is more casual, you can't always be sure that you guys are on the same page all the time. And so it comes to the thing of communication. Communicating your needs effectively, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. There's also something to be said about understanding the difference between expectations and entitlement. Having the expectation that someone is going to do something isn't always the same as what they're actually going to do. And entitlement is what you believe that you are owed. And I think it is very easy to get mixed up between the lines of what you should expect from humans versus what you should feel entitled to from them. It also depends on what your relationship is with them, what emphasis they have put into you, what care they have put towards you, and how you balance that. You might have an expectation for something, but they don't think you deserve to be entitled about it, and vice versa. That's why communication is so important, so that you're on the same page about what to expect from one another, and you're not feeling a sense of entitlement over something that the other person disagrees with. I think another really important thing that everyone should do is recognize when your expectations are realistic versus idealistic. Having realistic expectations is something that creates healthy boundaries and healthy communication. And if there is no boundary and if there is no communication, expectations can very easily become idealistic. Becomes an idea of what you want the person to be versus who they are. And like I said, humans are imperfect. That's just the truth of the matter. And therefore, if everybody is coming up with these crazy idealistic expectations of what they want from people, then no one would have healthy relationships because there wouldn't be any communication. 3. Red flags that enough is enough. When it comes to red flags, it's always really tricky to navigate because even if you see something that you know is a red flag, if you really care about a person, you won't want to call it out. And as much as anyone can say anything else about it, you have to be the one to call it out. One of these things would be consistent patterns of behavior that don't change despite promises. Even though people say they'll do things, if they don't follow through, that in itself is a red flag. If you feel let down by somebody and that affects your mental health and self-esteem, think twice. Because when someone lets you down so many times that it affects you that deeply, is it really worth you caring about that much? If you are having a relationship with somebody, whether that is romantic platonic, familial, if it becomes more draining than fulfilling, then maybe that's a sign that you're not putting your eggs in the right basket. And of course, with all of these relationships, some of them may be harder to cut off than others. And so if you are in a position where you can, I would say do so. And if you are in a position where you can't, then distance yourself to the amount that you can and go from there. If there is broken trust that hasn't been rebuilt, that is a sign to keep it that way. And also, when you are making excuses for someone's behavior to others, and you can hear yourself doing so, that in itself should be a sign that you're not in the right place. 4. Sometimes this can also be a tricky part, which is the art of moving on. How do you come to terms that it is time to move on from a relationship and from a situation that you have found yourself in, whether it has been one that has gone on for years or one that has only been for a few months? Coming to terms with being honest with yourself about the situation that you found yourself in is never easy. So I would say try to set boundaries with yourself first. Understand that the other person doesn't serve you anymore. And while they are not perfect, and while you are also not perfect, you know that they are not right for what you need, at least right now. And that's okay. And you are allowed to take a step back, and you are allowed to quote unquote give up on the relationship with them, even though you would want to make it work. Be gentle with yourself, give yourself grace, take the time you need to focus on any other healthier family and friendships that you can in order to come to terms with this. And I know you'll be all right. So I hope that you appreciated this insight today, because I think that it has also changed the approach that I have on the relationships that I have made over the time. And I think it's really good to have that insight and be able to know when things are right for you and when things aren't, because there are so many people in this world, but not everyone is going to be right for you, and not everybody is going to serve you, and that's okay. And so I'll see you next week. And as always, don't forget, you're amazing, you're loved, and I thank you for being here.